Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Daniel Ricciardo is officially a Red Bull driver once again, leaving as their second driver a few years ago, returning now as their third driver for 2023. Is this a good decision? Is this actually the best way to take his career forward and try and return in 2024, especially with potential Perez Verstappen drama lingering behind the scenes? Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. The announcement has just been revealed then by Red Bull. He's back. Welcome home, Daniel Ricciardo. Left a few years ago, weird circumstances, decided to go to Renault. Questions about whether he really wanted to be, knowing what was happening there with Verstappen and the way that car was being developed, and feeling like, the second driver really of the team at that point, wanted to leave. Went to Renault, had some good success there. The McLaren days weren't so successful. Did win that race, of course, in Monza last season. This year, absolutely pretty much disaster from start to finish. So the question was, would there be another seat available? We thought maybe Alpine, a return to Renault, effectively could have been on the cards. There probably would have been a seat elsewhere in the grid. Haas themselves said, I believe Steiner said, look, if he wants to give me a call, I'm open to the call. But at the time, Ricciardo hadn't reached out to Haas and seemingly didn't want to drive a car that far down the grid. You can understand it, but is this Ricciardo's best way back into a starting seat? Maybe, maybe not. We've seen this season Nick De Vries, reserve driver at Mercedes, got a great chance to step in for Alex Albon in Monza, did a great job. Now he's signed to Alfa Tauri. So I guess Ricciardo's hoping for a similar kind of, turn of fortune, I suppose, in his favour, and also wants to kind of refine himself. I think he's talked about not really feeling that the passion for the sport again, and wants to kind of find that again this season before giving it his all once more in 2024. So it's officially true. The third driver as well. There were some concerns or rumours that he might effectively be the second reserve, with Liam Lawson being the primary test driver for both Red Bull and Alfa Tauri, and he would just be working in the simulator and in testing. But they say third drivers, that probably means that if for whatever reason there needs to be a seat to be taken, either Yuki Tsunoda's seat or potentially even Nick De Vries' seat at Alfa Tauri, who knows, but also in the Red Bulls, if, a driver's unwell or whatever, Ricciardo could step in for that race. This is the statement here from Red Bull. It is great to have this from Christian Horner. It's great to bring Daniel back into the Red Bull family. He has enormous talent and is such a brilliant character. I know the whole factory is excited to be welcoming him home. In his role as test and third driver, Daniel will give us more chance to diversify, assisting in the development of the car, aiding the team with his experience and knowledge of what it takes to succeed in Formula 1. We're very pleased to be working with Daniel again. Look forward to everything he brings. Ricciardo says, the smiles is it all as always. I'm truly excited to be coming back home to Oracle Red Bull Racing. Of course, they have to say that as their third driver in 2023. So many fond memories from Christian, Helmut Marko, the entire team. Something he is very appreciative of. The ability to contribute and be surrounded by the best team in Formula 1 is hugely appealing, whilst also giving me time to recharge and refocus. So, that's his plan. I can't wait to be supporting the team with simulator work, testing sessions, and commercial activities. So, that is basically the crux of it. So, wants to find a part of himself again, rebuild, get the passion back, and be part of Red Bull for now, and then find a seat next season in 2024. There will be competition there. We've got Mick Schumacher, other drivers want a seat. There will be some probably key Formula 2 graduates at that point as well, looking for a seat as well. Not going to be easy for Daniel Ricciardo to retain his seat, but maybe the Red Bull thing could be a possibility, because who knows who the driver's going to be after Perez. We know that Verstappen's staying for quite some time to come. So yes, testing, simulator work, another voice in the conversation to make the car better behind the scenes, and also commercial activities. That's a key piece of Daniel Ricciardo's kind of, especially since Drive to Survive and stuff, one of the biggest brands and personalities in the entire sport. After Lewis Hamilton, Ricciardo's right up there as the biggest personality in Formula 1. So makes sense he wants to stay around the grid. He won't be at every race, I imagine, but still pretty cool to see nonetheless. So is this the right decision for Ricciardo? That I guess is one of the key questions. Jenson Button said a couple of weeks ago now that he doesn't think this is the way to go. He thinks that actually at least staying on the grid would have been the plan. Go to Haas, even go to Williams if you have to, right? And you talk to those guys and make it work. But seemingly after the Alpine seat wasn't going to be available, it was quite clear that Ricciardo was probably going to take a year away and then try and come back. And seemingly Red Bull, obviously Red Bull is his target. We talked about Mercedes was a possibility, but now it's quite clear that Ricciardo back to Red Bull probably makes the most sense for both parties. Is this actually the way to go? I'm not particularly sure at the moment, but at least he's still on the grid somewhere and doesn't completely disappear and go to IndyCar or something. I do wonder if there's any, of course, I don't really think this played into his thought process here, but it might have done just a little bit, because we believe the other day Helmut Marko leaked that Danny Rick was going to be their third driver, but then Christian Horner was like, hang on a second, Helmut, he hasn't actually signed a piece of paper yet. And then of course he has since then signed the piece of paper, but that was before Abu Dhabi. He was like, yeah, Ricciardo hasn't signed the contract, and he probably only did that over the last 2 days. I wonder if there was any part of him that thought about the drama at Brazil, because, look, for all they want to talk, I mean, look, the PR spin at Abu Dhabi for Red Bull was out of control. Every single piece of interview they did was like, yeah, what a great team effort, guys. Great team effort, really great teamwork. Like, Verstappen was saying that all the time in his interviews, even after the race. He was like, yeah, great team performance, guys. It's like, oh my God, you're just going to slap us in the face with this team stuff left, right, and centre to make it appear like it's all sunshine and rainbows, right? And maybe it's all fine now. But I kind of doubt that it's all fine. There's obviously a reason why Verstappen felt disrespected by Perez to such an extent that he refused to give him the position back for a meaningless P6 for him at least. And then Perez probably feels the same way. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But you do have to wonder, just to think about, right? That, look, who knows how Perez, his contract's for another couple of years. But if Ricciardo's there, is there a chance that 2024, like, Ricciardo comes back in as the second driver? Okay, the other driver to Max Verstappen. Like, I don't know, probably not going to happen, but still, one to at least think about on that side of things. Mick Schumacher, quick comment on him, because he reckons that, yes, many people in the paddock are happy with how he's developed and wants him to come back as well. So it's not like Ricciardo has no competition for a grid spot in 2024. Even saying that the Mercedes reserve role is very possible, saying that his dad did the switch from Ferrari, of course, to Mercedes. Don't see a reason why he couldn't do the same thing. So that's the expectation now, with Ricciardo taking the Red Bull reserve role. The Mick Schumacher will take the Mercedes reserve role. We might see that here in the coming days. Let's change tack a little bit. Speaking of Mercedes, big news as well from the FIA that Shayla Ann Rao, she's a figure we've talked about a fair bit this season actually, on various dramas involving Mercedes. So she was the interim, this is a key word, interim, Secretary General for Motorsport earlier this year, after a spell working for Mercedes, is now leaving the FIA. Now, there was lots of drama about this particular woman because she was formerly working for Mercedes, obviously, and every time there was anything that Mercedes might have benefited from, the rumour came out of the Red Bull camp largely that she was leaking this information to Mercedes. There was some interesting evidence for this, just because back in Canada, they just introduced a rule right before the event started, or that weekend started, where you were allowed like 2 stays on the floor of your car instead of 1, and Mercedes just happened to turn up and have the second stay, even though the other teams are like, how did you know, or how did you get this prepared in advance? But, you know, of course, the rumour had it from Red Bull that, oh yeah, this woman at the FIA is leaking everything, and it was the same story around the cost cap, right? And, you know, Red Bull were arguably trying to change the topic away from they broke the rules to, you know, Mercedes obviously are getting leaks because they found out about this and stuff. So, like, they were trying to maybe change the topic there. And in fairness, it wasn't really Mercedes that were the first to know about the cost cap breach. It was Ferrari that I think were really the first to talk about it. But, you know, whatever. Helmut Marko had his few comments, and he said things along the line of, like, basically that on the leaks that there's some evidence of a compliance violation, basically saying that she was leaking things to our old team Mercedes. There's plenty of, you know, characters from different teams that have gone on to work for the FIA and aren't necessarily in violation of anything, but it's interesting to note. But I must say that the reporting on most of this, especially like the articles that don't mention the interim comments, is like, you know, she's just departed from her role, kind of implies that she's been fired, right, for leaking stuff. Don't believe that's the case, because if you look at the actual statements here, it's quite clear that, you know, she was the interim Secretary General. She was going to move on for this role anyway. So, you know, I know people are going to get the tinfoil hats on, but, you know, just look at the actual words that they say. So, you know, joined the team during a transition period, has, you know, successfully managed this transition period, providing valuable support to whatever, and the organisation during this period is now coming to an end, so she will now leave the FIA following the end of this season, and, you know, thanks for the support. So, I don't know, I guess put the tinfoil hats on if you want, but the reality is more likely that she was going to be leaving this season anyway, despite these rumours from Helmut Marko and co. But that's the thing, Red Bull can no longer point to that next season if Mercedes do suddenly have some interesting information that potentially they shouldn't have been able to acquire. So that kind of brings that storyline to an end. And just a couple of things before we close out the video here, thought this was quite remarkable. This season was the first season in over 31 years that, well, none of these two drivers won a race. Kind of crazy stuff. Like the record that these guys had for 15 years in a row between both of them, basically, is absolutely remarkable stuff. So Schumacher won a race for so many seasons in a row, and then Hamilton did the same thing for another several years, and wasn't the case this year. Interesting stat I also heard about this weekend: if Hamilton had finished the race pretty much wherever he was, at least you know, P5 or whatever he would have been in Abu Dhabi, he would have broken the record for the most points scored without a victory. Russell would have also probably had this record for sure had he not won in Brazil, but Hamilton would have broken that record. But I believe now Bottas still has that record from a few seasons ago, and he didn't win a race, but still had the most points without it. So just an interesting stat to mention. And also this that's come out from Pirelli, these numbers, you can dispute some of these overtakes, I think, because because it's kind of difficult to always clarify what counts as an overtake. I'm pretty sure they're not including coming into the pits and stuff or anything like that. But this season there were significantly more overtakes than last year, about a 30% increase. Does that mean that the cars are better? Probably it does to a certain extent. But also last season, if you look at Abu Dhabi or something like that, the difference in performance of the cars was like honestly pretty astonishing. Like the Red Bull and the Mercedes were so far ahead of the rest of the field. It was remarkable. Like this season, the actual, like, you know, the spread of the field in terms of ability, despite the fact that the Red Bull were pretty dominant, is actually smaller than it's been like last season, let's say. Largely, I would imagine due to the budget cap starting to come into effect. So maybe that's also a factor, but I thought, you know, just goes to show I think we are moving in the right direction. I just would like to see some smaller cars in future years because, yeah, these cars are just a bit too big and a bit too cumbersome, especially around certain street circuits, such as Monaco, for example. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.